morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
Today we're going to ride a big circle from the ranges of the north to the canyons and cactus of Arizona and the big ranch country of Texas with some amazing insight and experience from folks like the legendary Rusty Richards.
And I walked out there and did my number and stepped back into line and kept singing Sons of Pioneers song, and nobody ever mentioned it. You know? I'm sure there's people down here in Texas. I wonder what in the world happened to him. You know?
And the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight shines on a master wordsmith, Joel Nelson.
Since the glory that was Camelot with her dragons breathing fire, the hero of the world has been the horseback man for hire.
And on the Rangeland News,
Cow-calf operators have been getting somewhat lower prices for feeders.
on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, a well-broke, well-seasoned older horse started giving his owner some real problems, and it was nothing physical. The styles and trappings of working cowboys and buckaroos vary a lot from region to region, dictated somewhat by the kind of country they ride and work in, and the music of those regions has its own distinctive differences, and that's what we're going to look at after we start out on the Northern Range.
Let's go down to Texas, leave this cold Canadian winter far behind. Let's go down to Texas, leave this cold Canadian winter far behind, far behind. We'll visit every honky-tonk, dance every song. We'll do something, even if it's wrong. Just like Marty Wood at the Fort Worth Fat Stock Show Rodeo. Yeah, just like Marty Wood at the Fort Worth Fat Stock Show and Rodeo. Rodeo. Well, he came to strap it on him. He'll be a long time gone. He'll do something, even if it's wrong. Lord, I'm sick and tired of feeding cows and all this ice and snow. Lord, take me down to Galveston where them Gulf breezes blow. You buy Lone Star, I buy Coors. You drink mine, honey, I drink yours. We'll just take it easy, baby, take it slow. Sick and tired of feeding cows and all this ice and snow. Lord, take me down to Galveston where them Gulf breezes blow. You buy Lone Star, I buy Coors. You drink mine, honey, I drink yours. We just take it easy, baby, take it slow. Take me down to Texas, leave this cold Canadian winter far behind. Let's go down to Texas, leave this cold Canadian winter far behind, far behind. We'll hit every honky-tonk, dance to every song. We'll do something, even if it will do something, even if it will do something, even if it's wrong. Yeah.
A great example of Western swing kind of Texas style from old Ian, and that was recorded actually in Toronto. Goes back quite a ways, Lone Star and Coors, and covers some of the cattle country of the West. Now, Craig Chambers and I were backstage at the National Cowboy Symposium in Lubbock, Texas, and the subject of regional differences in cowboy styles and cowboy music came up. Oh, and by the way, the air conditioner was working overtime, and it was really cold back there.
They're trying to make you feel at home.
It was 92 degrees in Kamloops, British Columbia when we left. We landed in Amarillo, and it was 65.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
It can change.
Well, and see, Amarillo being 65 there, and it was 90 here today, and or close to it, and I promise you, it was 10 degrees colder. 10 degrees warmer where I live, and this is it's like Canada. It's like where you're from. It's so diverse.
Yeah.
The high country, the low country, and then the distance from north to south.
Yeah.
And
yet, the West is still the West, and we meet people from Idaho and Oregon and Montana and Nevada and New Mexico and cross trails with them all over.
Mm-hmm.
And Alberta and BC are pretty much the same. Our traditions are the same. Our ranching values are the same. The people are the same. Our dialect or our accent might be a little bit different, but that's about it.
it's the same way here. When you are in the Southwest, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, is pretty much the same kind of a culture and attitude, and the country's not that much different until you get down to the coast. But then when you start like through Arizona, Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, and up through there, Montana, it's quite a bit different. They have the tough, severe winters that we don't have. They have some, it's just a little bit different kind of country and a little bit different kind of cowboy and a little bit different kind of livestock to make it all work.
Yeah. And even, paralleling that, the differences in the gear and from the vaquero traditions and the slick horns and the long riatas to the rubber-wrapped horns to the fellows that are tied hard and fast and the tapaderos and the chinks and what you find our fellows wear. And the music seems to parallel the changes. Ian Tyson does a unique style of music on the eastern slope country of the Rocky Mountains. Mm-hmm. And you can come down into Colorado and there's a little bit of influence. And then there's, of course, in Texas, there's this wonderful Western swing traditions, but it's all got its regional flavor to it. The Californio and the Spanish influence.
Absolutely, yeah. And we do have a little bit of the Tejano influence here, the border music that I incorporate into some of my music because I grew up listening to that, and I wish I had the time in my life to explore that a little more, not just so much as a listener, but get into it musically a little deeper. Yeah. It's a wonderful musical tradition that we share here in the Southwest with our friends south of the border.
Yeah, and we still love to come to Texas, and when you and I were talking over there in Fort Worth, at Big Balls in Cowtown, and this great Western swing music was playing on stage, and we were enjoying a long Lone Star beer, and I thought, man, there is just so much this Texas feel right here.
Well, we've sort of learned to enjoy life.
Yeah, you can see great cowboys and great cowboy musicians riding the ranges of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, and all over the western states. And you'll hear more of Craig's thoughts on western music, and a great example of it when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Craig Chambers is one of those charming Texas gentlemen, Westerner, who brings first-hand knowledge of the cattle and horse industries into Western music, and he's a terrific player and arranger himself. Many years lead vocalist and outstanding rhythm guitar player with the elite group, the Time Warp Top Hands, with folks like the late, great Tommy Morell, Mark Abbott, Bobby Boatwright, Rich O'Brien, and a few others. Boy, just some absolute legends of Western swing.
I consider it a blessing to get to play with musicians with that much experience and guys of that caliber. It is terrific, and if we didn't love it, I'm sure we wouldn't do it. Don't make that much money doing it, but the rewards are great. It's we get to play a lot of dances, and kind of keep that tradition of the ranch dance, and play that old music. But I've enjoyed introducing new songs into the Western swing tradition and playing them with the authenticity and the feel and the trueness to the roots that Bob Wills or Milton Brown would have been proud of, but bringing in some new songs, but play them in the old, honor the tradition, honor the genre, and yet introduce new material. And I think that's what's going to keep the heart beating of Western swing.
Well, you fellows are doing a fine job at that and keeping the spirit of the West alive. And Craig, it's just a real pleasure to be able to visit with you and let you share some of what's behind the music with our listeners. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for doing that.
Well, I can't thank you enough, and we're always glad to have you in this country. Come see us again.
We sure will.
And here's Craig Chambers with a song that illustrates exactly what he's talking about.
In those days, the dances were
last all night long. And out on the ranches we'd waltz until dawn, holding the ladies like something divine. 3/4 moon, 3/4 time. She was a beauty, she came from St. Joe, visiting someone I never did know. And I was a cowhand from south of the line. 3/4 moon, 3/4 time. And I asked her to dance to the Westphalia waltz, and taking my hand she forgave all my faults as we started circling to the fiddler's design. And 3/4 moon, 3/4 time. Songs that we waltzed to are still on my mind, like the way that the stars made her eyes shine, and the way that she sang like a songbird in rhyme. And the 3/4 moon, the 3/4 time. She asked me of things that a cowboy would know. She told me of places a rich girl would go, and never once looked down on me and my kind. 3/4 moon, 3/4 time. The last song the band played, we stood holding hands, singing Old Paint, I am leaving Cheyenne. And finding the shadow placed her lips on mine. 3/4 moon, 3/4 time. For so long I've wondered what's happened to her, and far though I've wandered, these feelings still stir and make me start singing to keep me from crying. 3/4 moon, 3/4 time. Songs that we waltz to are still on my mind, like the way that the stars made her eyes shine, and the way that she sang like a songbird in rhyme. And the 3/4 moon, 3/4 time. 3/4 moon, 3/4 time.
Craig Chambers, 3/4 moon, 3/4 time, just makes you want to be at that old dance hall Saturday night. And now we're going to move on from Texas to Arizona. Rusty Richards sang tenor for over 20 years with the Sons of the Pioneers. He's well over 80 now and still starting colts. And the great Bob Wagner and Rusty and I were together in Tucson for this conversation.
I had a bull called Zero that hit me in the face exactly the way we're talking about 3, and I broke 2 front teeth. Fortunately, they're small fractures, one right down along one of my front teeth. And Clinton Emerson is a great horseman in California, has a horse farm in Hemet, and he wrote the Book of Dentistry for UCLA and is a real hero among all the dentists out there. Yeah. Great friend of mine, and I for years used to start his young horses out there. and he repaired those teeth for me. So,
Good to know
but a little bull called Zero that bucked much the same way as 3 did, and I got hit in the mouth.
You got bruised around pretty good during your time, haven't you, Rusty? I just noticed in your left jaw again there. Tell Hugh about that.
That was a horse that belonged to Burt Reynolds, and he was a stallion, an Arabian stallion, son of Ann Malik, a Spanish-bred horse. And I really didn't know what to do with the horse. I know Burt liked him a lot, and I thought, well, it would please him if I high schooled him. So I taught him all these tricks. I had him where he would count and do the Spanish walk and walk on his hind legs, and he could walk on his knees and do all the little things like say yes and no, and he'd get down and roll over on command like a dog. I could make him get down and turn over. And in walking him on his hind legs, he would lash real hard with his front legs to balance himself. And I was always watching that I didn't get struck, or get underneath him too much and get hit. And I thought he had just lost his balance. I'm backing away from him and making him walk, and was coming down. Well, he'd made up his mind to bite me before he'd ever started down. That's the easiest trick in the world to teach a horse. In the movies, when you see an aggressive fighting horse, all they do is flip them lightly with the whip. They're not abusing them. They're just annoying them with the lash, and then showing them like recoiling away from the horse, like you're intimidated, and that'll bring the horse right on. He'll just come right on, and then when they're in a movie, they get their shot, they just stand up and say, whoa, in an assertive way, and the horse will stop. Well, I hadn't even thought about that. I'm backing away from him, and he's lashing away, and I thought he might hit me. And he came right on through and made a lunge for my face, and he grabbed me by the face. And let me tell you that, if you can just imagine a big set of hoof nippers, you can imagine the guy with a big set of nippers just grabbing you by the face. That's what it felt like, And you could stick your fingers in 2 big slots there and see my teeth.
We got some more with Rusty Richards coming up a little bit later, and next, Baxter Black talks about horse people, and then it's the Rangeland News when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, and I'll be right back after this with a little peek at horse people.
Your land is a legacy, a challenge from those who tended it before you to build on their foundations. At Corteva Agriscience, we understand what it means to be the stewards of a legacy. We embrace the challenge of building on the foundation of Dow AgroSciences to maintain your trust, to bring new solutions, to help you care for your land. See how we can help build your legacy at rangeandpasture.com.
And for our Canadian listeners, just check corteva.ca, the Canadian website.
I'd like to talk to you about a certain kind of person that ranks in my mind with duck hunters. Now, don't get your gander up. I'm not going to say anything about duck hunters. After all, what can you say about someone who gets up in the middle of the night, in the middle of the winter, and then goes out and stands in water all day up to his buckle and then shoots a duck? But I'm not talking about duck hunters. No, the kind of people I'm talking about are horse people. Yes, you may have one in your family. You know it when you sit down at the table with a horse person, because the first thing they start talking about is horses. On and on and on. And if there's 2 of them, you might as well get up and leave, because you ain't going to get a word in edgewise. And cowboys are the worst. You can be driving down the road, 3 of you in the front seat of the pickup, and you'll pass by this big old meadow. There'll be 52 sorrel geldings out there, each with one stocking leg and a little snip right on the end of his nose. And this guy sitting in the middle will point out there and say, "See that 1/17 from my left? I broke him." How you going to argue with somebody like that? Or you go out to somebody's place and they say, Doc, it's good to see you. I just got a brand new horse. I know you'll want to look at him." See, they think because I'm a veterinarian that I care, which of course I do. Well, I have a confession to make. I have come to realize over the years that I have been a horse person all along. I sat there observing the obsession of horse people with their beast and saying, yeah, I know people like that, never realizing that I too was afflicted. It all came into focus one cruel winter evening, 15 degrees, 20-mile-an-hour wind and snowing hard. Our company just arrived, and I had just acquired a spectacular King Ranch gelding. The brand alone is worth $100. In my excitement, I said, "Listen, I got a really new dandy horse. He's shiny as a new Dodge Dually and smooth as silk pajamas on a snake. How'd you like to slip out to the corral and have a look?" Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my wife display an arched eyebrow, a sign of warning, not unlike the one you've seen on a teamster's face when he's about to take a bullwhip to a wayward oxen. She said calmly, "Honey, it's 20 below outside. The drifts are 6 feet deep, not to mention the fact that your mother is 80 years old." This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by Corteva Agri-Science.
Come and celebrate the 70th anniversary of the North Thompson Fall Fair and Rodeo in Barrier, BC, August 31st to September the 2nd, with a full 3 days of BCRA rodeo finals, pony chariot and chuck wagon racing, entertainment stage, lawn tractor races, 4-H and livestock competitions, outdoor, indoor entertainment, bingo, amusements, heavy horse pulls and competitions, light horse show, hundreds of entries in the exhibit hall, great food, commercial booths and exhibits, children's area, and much more. And join us for the Cowboy Concert Sunday night. Get all the details at fallfair-rodeo.com. This tour through the music of the West heads back to the Northern Range now. And there's a place in south central Alberta, a little ways north of Drumheller and a bit southeast of Red Deer, called Rumsey. And it is the only large, relatively undisturbed area of aspen parkland left in Canada, and it's also recognized for its vital importance as the largest remaining block of rough fescue grassland in North America. And Fred Doberstein wrote a fine song about the Rumsey Hills.
I'd like to saddle up a pony and I'd ride the Rumsey Hills. North of the Badlands, where the Red Deer River flows, south beyond a marshy lake they call the Buffalo, there's a ranchland that hasn't changed, I hope it never will, where the grass waves on the prairie wind. The rugged Rumsey Hill, I'd like to saddle up a pony and I'd ride across the hills to be there for the roundup in the fall, or camp beneath the starlit sky on a warm summer night, and I'd listen to the night owl's lonely call, the sound of the prairie, spring and fall. The Rumsey Hills lie still in the spring's early dawn. A cowboy's working hard when the calves are being born. It's springtime in the willows and the grass is turning green. It's cowboy time and working days on the prairie once again. I'd like to saddle up a pony and I'd ride across the hills to be there for the roundup in the fall. Or in the snows of winter on a cold starry night, I listen to the cattle as they bawl, the sound of the winter and the fall. Prairie moon keeps shining down, and the restless winds still blow, where the grass grows in the coulee on the graves of buffalo. And out there on a moonlit night, when the wind has got the chills, an old-time cowboy's riding out in the Romsey Hills, out in the Romsey Hills. I'd like to saddle up a pony, and I'd ride the Romsey Hills.
Now the news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, it says, as we look forward to the fall cattle run that'll be underway very shortly, there are a few things in the new U.S. Cattle on Feed report that indicate a slight contraction in inventories. And here's Gary Crawford with more.
Within USDA cattle inventory and monthly cattle on feed reports, literally hundreds and hundreds of numbers.
And you'd like to know what it all means.
That's right, because I certainly don't know. That's why we talk with USDA livestock analyst Shale Shagam. Now, yes, total number of animals in feedlots, 13.6 million, up 2% from a year ago, the largest inventory for at least the last 23 years. But when you look at the rest of the numbers,
it really paints a picture to a steady to slightly declining inventory.
Partly because of that July 1st number of beef replacement heifers, 4.4 million head, down 4% from a year ago.
Which would indicate that producers are sort of pulling back on their idea of expanding the cow herd.
Shagam says cow-calf operators have been getting somewhat lower prices for feeders. Those operators have been right at the break-even point now for over a year.
So there's probably not a lot of signal for them to expand, nor is there much of a signal for them to contract.
So it could be a pretty much steady-as-she-goes thing until we see what happens to this season's crops of corn, soybeans, and hay. Gary Crawford, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Scientists at the University of Alberta have identified 19 genes that could serve as key markers for feed efficiency in cattle. For the past decade, researchers and cattle breeders have worked to capitalize on the genetic components in the ability of cattle to efficiently convert feed into lean beef, and they've made significant progress. The Alberta researchers examined genome-wide gene expressions of rumen, liver, muscle, and back fat tissues, key tissues involved in energy metabolism, and of about 20,000 genes expressed in these tissues, the researchers identified 19 that are common to all four and appear to be associated with feed and feed efficiency. And a team of University of Calgary researchers is attempting to learn how rodeo performances affect horses and bulls that are bred to buck. A partnership between the university's Faculty of Veterinary Medicine and the Calgary Stampede allows a research team to spend each day of the rodeo observing bucking bulls to assess stress levels, humane handling, and improvements that could be made to keep the animals and the riders safe. The cowboys and handlers are interested, of course, in the research, and they have contributed their observations. If the animals aren't healthy and happy, they're not going to perform well, and the cowboys aren't going to get a good score, says veterinarian Jennifer Pearson. The bulls are generally in a pen with a herd mate rather than a strange bull, and some contractors will even bring along bulls just to be buddies with the bulls in the competition. The buddy bull won't perform, but he's a friend to keep the other bulls calm. And I guess this is of interest to folks in the business of producing food to feed the world. A paper commissioned by Cargill says food consumption is forecast to double on a per capita basis in China and South Asia. The paper says meat accounts for 17% of the global calorie intake. Well, this old cowboy and that sweet-sounding river song guitar will be at the 2019 Provincial Winter Fair at Circle Creek Ranch in Kamloops on Saturday, September the 28th. I'll be sharing songs and stories from about 3 to 5, and I think I'll be on about the same time as the pig and duck race. And you might remember seeing Circle Creek Ranch on the first episode of the TV show The Amazing Race Canada back in July. And there's a big event coming up in Vanderhoof, BC. It's the Sheep and Goat Sale on September 14th. Starts at 11 a.m. at the Vanderhoof Yards of the BC Livestock Co-op. And then there's a yearling and a regular cattle sale at Kamloops on September 10th and a regular cattle sale in Williams Lake September the 12th. Get all the information. See the sale streaming live at bclivestock.bc.ca. Meanwhile, at the Innisfail Auction Market, regular cattle sales every Wednesday and lots of horse sales. And it might be a good idea to list your yearlings coming off pastures for the fall run. Just give Danny, Mark, or Dwayne a call at 1-800-710-3166. And I guess we're down to the final item. And as you're hearing this, our Spirit of the West cruise gang is just beginning our journey through the British Isles aboard a beautiful ship, the Crown Princess. And now, a few years ago, some of our cruisers had a lot to learn about cruise ship life, but after 4 or 5 or 6 or more cruises with us, they are pretty savvy. Now, I won't name this couple, but on their very first one, they just settled into their beautiful balcony cabin, and Mark saw a call button beside the door and a sign that said, "Ring bell for cabin steward." So he pushed the button. And within minutes, the cabin steward was at the door. And he says, "Yes, Mr. McMillan, can I help you?" And Mark says, "Yes, you can. I have a question." The cabin steward says, "Yes, what's that?" Mark says, "I'd like to know why you can't ring the bell yourself." And that's the Rangeland News coming up in the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File. Horses that are well broke, seasoned, and usually reliable sometimes develop behavior problems. What's going on? And more from Rusty Richards when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Coming up in the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, we'll look at some cases where well-broke, older, reliable horses have developed behavior problems and how some of them were helped. But first, well, so many of you have been asking about the 2020 Spirit of the West cruise, so here's the information. The dates: July the 1st to the 11th, 2020. The ship, Holland America's brand new Koningsdam. The port where we'll board, Vancouver, British Columbia. And our destination,
way up north, to Alaska, way up north, to Alaska.
A lot of you can drive to Vancouver, or you can take the famous Rocky Mountaineer rail trip, or just a shorter flight. We call this the Spirit of the West and Friends Bringing It Home. Billy and I will be stepping back from hosting cruises after 19 years of doing it, and we want this one to be really special for everybody. Get all the details at 1-800-530-0131 and see our cruise page at hugh-mclennan.com and our cruise Facebook page.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
How do you spell back to school? I-R-V-I-N-E.
Mister, you need help.
Back to school starts with Urban Tack and Western Wear. It's Western wear with a welcome twist, even for the littlest cowboys and cowgirls. Latest styles, biggest brand names, jeans, boots, shirts, outerwear, and accessories too. Tell your folks and then saddle up for Urban's today.
Pretty smart for a guy who can't spell so good.
Urban Tack and Western Wear, off exit 305 on Highway 2 by Crossfield, open 7 days a week.
Don't just wear it, live it. Urban Tack and Western Wear.
In the never-ending subject of why horses do what they do, I've heard from a few good horsemen with well-broke, well-seasoned horses who have developed a behavior problem. Not the horsemen, but the horses. One of the most common is resistance. When asked to do something they've always done willingly, and when pushed, they start tossing their heads. And a while back, one of my good ones would start tossing her head when I'd ask for a lope. And it continued to get worse. And I really felt bad when I found out she was actually in the early stages of founder, and her front feet were really hurting. But when there's nothing wrong physically and they still do it, there can be other reasons for sure. Some folks might say, just put a tie down on them, that'll fix it. And that's not what I'd do. It probably won't fix the symptom, and it sure won't fix the cause. The great trainer Tom Curtin says there are 3 typical reasons why a horse flips his head. 1, and real common around our country in the midsummer, the bugs are bothering him. And boy, that can sure do it. Face flies, deer flies, and especially up here, the horse flies. Or 2, his feet are bothering him. And I like this one. Probably the most common and the most important reason a horse flips his head is because he's not sure what to do with his feet. Now, whenever a horse is good with his feet, he'll be good with his head. You need to control the life of the horse's body through his legs to his feet, and then it goes to his mind. And a lot of really smart horses will be great for a while, but they might be questioning why they need to do what the rider's asking. And if you don't see those first small signs of resistance and deal with them properly, it will give the horse a reason to figure he's doing the right thing by taking over the agenda. And with the real smart ones, it can develop to the point where he might have the average rider buffaloed, as an old mentor of mine used to say. I guess it really comes down to being focused and tuned into your horse every minute you're with him on the ground or in the saddle. And for Irvin Saddles and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. Our horses really do well on that daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration, and you can find out all about it at hoffmanshorseration.com. Well, Rusty Richards has more about that episode where the stallion Furnaw bit a big chunk out of his cheek, and he was scheduled to be on stage with the Sons of the Pioneers the next day. But first, here's a powerful song that Rusty wrote about another horse and an old California vaquero.
There once was a rugged old Spanish vaquero, Viejo they called him, the old one, and he worked for the rancho they called El Niguel, full of stories one dark night he told one. The lines on his face were stories themselves, reflections of those in his mind, and the glow of our fire lit the gleam in his eyes as he looked to the days far behind. With a rawhide, riata, a bow saddle, and spade, I spent my life here on the ranch working cattle on the good Spanish ponies I've made. And the fire burned bright, lighting up the night. I remember one winter when the sky seemed to fall till it turned the whole land into mud, and thunderstorms ripped through the darkness like cannon till Aliso Creek raged in a flood. There were cattle bogged down in the rain-soaked ground and calves bald and lost to their mothers. And for days we did ride, although soaked to the hide, we saved some but kept searching for others. Then the good horse I had been riding, old Chico by name, was weary from work and I knew I should rest him, but hijo, that pony was game. And the flames leaped high in the deep night sky. So we rode to Aliso to look for a crossing, but the mad water's too deep to ford. Then old Chico dove in, it was homebound to him, and I offered my soul to the Lord. Then under the rain-swollen waters we rolled till I knew that we surely would drown. But I had me a death grip on old Chico's tail, he at last pulled me out on the ground. Then I heard a voice calling, and ahead saw a form, and I rode on to find there a beautiful girl whose home had been lost in the storm. And the sparks whirled round with a crackling sound. Ooh, ooh. Well, believe it or not, that's how I met Lola, mi esposa, mi corazon, wife. For sometimes out of the worst comes the best in a way that can change your whole life. After beautiful courtship, we were wed at the mission, and the mariachis, they did sing. And children they followed, and grandchildren too, and my life has been lived like a king. Then a smile broke the wrinkles, and he pushed back a tear, and he pulled down the brim of his worn-out old hat, and he laid back asleep in his gear. And the coals burned low with a deep red glow.
So, Rusty had a very painful encounter with the stallion Furnaw when he lost that big chunk out of his face.
And I had to do a show with the Sons of Pioneers in down in Texas. And this was to be like the Woodstock of country. Everybody that wasn't already booked on that day got booked. I've forgotten the name of the place in Texas, but we're way out there on this. And boy, I mean, they had done it up right. Great big stage and huge sound system. I think we outnumbered the audience, but everybody was at Ernest Tubb was there and all kinds of performers out of Nashville, Sons of Pioneer. And here I am. The doctor said that it was so ragged where I had been torn up. He said, try to sew that up, it'll just scar you up worse, and you've got an enormous blood supply there. So he cleaned it up and he used tannic acid. And of course it just made this big hard bloody place on my face. And now I'm standing there and Dale I thought surely Dale would tell the audience what happened to me, you know, and I walked out there and did my number and stepped back into line and kept singing Sons of Pioneer song, and nobody ever mentioned it, you know. I'm sure there's people down there in Texas, I wonder what in the world happened to him, you know. But that stallion had grabbed me by the face.
Man. He was quite a horse. Was his name Farna?
Furnaw.
Furnaw?
Yeah.
There's my Canadian accent again.
Yeah, his name was B.R. Furnaz Malik, after Ann Malik, and Furnaw, the B.R. of course was for Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
And it was Burt's horse. Right. And I had taught him all these tricks, and so for Christmas I'm going to give Burt a Christmas present, and Amy had a real nice camera, and she took all these 8x10 color photos of him doing all these tricks. And I had the saddle from the Electric Horseman, the silver saddle from the Electric Horseman, beautiful color pictures. And that was wrapped in under Burt's tree when I got a call from a girl in Florida. We'd shipped him down to Florida, and she said, I won the Class A show in Miami the week he arrived, and I want to know what you can tell me about how you ride and how you cue this horse and everything. And I've quit my job and bought the horse and going to make a career out of him. And Burt had sold him before he'd ever seen the pictures.
Oh, no. So he's got the pictures to remember him anyway.
That's it. He's got the pictures.
Man.
That was a memorable visit with Rusty Richards and the great Bob Wagner, two real close friends from California. And Bob will be coming up in our classic song segment. And next, it's our Cowboy Poetry Spotlight when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. We'll take you to the wide open range at the end of the day for this week's classic Song of the West. But right now, here's Alberta's Alan Christie.
That bronc stood trembling in the chute, was his first trip to town. Just a kid, I was ready to go, pulled that saddle down. Reg slapped me on the back and said, now boy, I don't give you a chance. I said, hey Reg, should I be you, I wouldn't go betting the ranch. I've got a black and white of a bronc ride, dated 1977. I'll give you a glimpse and I'll let you in on my little piece of heaven. Spurs and rain and a flying mane, I can smell that saddle leather off a black and white of a bronc ride, dated 1977. We got kids that rodeo, get together with our friends. We'll tell them kids how lucky they are, how tough it was back then. They roll their eyes and they can't disguise, but they're all full of doubt. I grabbed that album and I dusted her off, pull them pictures out. I've got a black and white of a bronc ride, dated 1977. I'll give you a glimpse and I'll let you in on my little piece of heaven. Spurs and a rain and a flying mane, I can smell that saddle leather off a black and white of a bronc ride, dated 1977. Now the times move on, old rage is gone, but I've got my memories. I'm grateful for the life I led and a few small victories. And that black and white of a bronc ride dated 1977. I give you a glimpse and I let you in on my little piece of heaven. Spurs and a rain and a flying mane, I can smell that saddle leather off a black and white of a bronc ride dated 1977. On my black and white of a bronc ride dated 1977. Hell of a year that, 77.
And Alan Christie, of course, referring to the legend himself in the world of stock contracting, Reg Kessler, 1977. Well, Bob Wagner and Rusty Richards, along with Dick Goodman, were known as the American Cowboys, and Bob did a number of wonderful multi-track recordings, singing all the parts, playing all the instruments on some beautiful classic songs of the West. And here's one that probably not too many of you remember, called Just a Wisp of Smoke.
Just a wisp of smoke on the darkening sky, and wherever it rises, there am I. My home is the glow of a campfire red, with my horse close by and my dusty bed. Just a wisp of smoke on the evening sky, from a sagebrush fire, and home am I. I'm a stranger in town where I don't fit in, but under the sky I'm the next of kin. There's a starry roof tree above me where I lay my head. It's the ancient lodge where my fathers dwelt before me, and its walls are bounded by fading flickers of firelight, and it's home to me just as long as life shall last. Just a wisp of smoke and my day's complete, where I kneel with my fry pan in the gentle heat, and I say a prayer to the man on high, for my fire and my food and my star-filled sky. Just a wisp of smoke, just a wisp of smoke.
I just can't help but wonder what he was cooking in that fry pan for supper. Now in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight, one of the very best, Joel Nelson.
History wrote his epitaph when barbed wire cut the range, while he was but an embryo adjusting to the change. But he was not aborted by the creaking stretch of wire, and the numbers still are legion of the horseback man for hire. His shadow cast at sunrise on some cut-bank wall of sand is a mate to the conquistador in Coronado's band. He is steeped in the traditions of those horsemen long ago, He is rumored to be mortal. He will not admit it's so. Since the glory that was Camelot with her dragons breathing fire, the hero of the world has been the horseback man for hire. And his glory days aren't over in spite of all we've read. He is no less than he ever was, no matter what's been said. In the deserts of the high-tech world, he's trailing up his cattle. He will never quit his horses, and he'll never sell his saddle.
Well, thanks again for making the ride today, and I sure hope you'll be right back here with us next week at the same time. And as always, thanks to Mark and Kathy McMillan, the official Spirit of the West support crew. And remember, you can follow along with us on our cruise going on this week at the Cruise Diary page at our website, hugh-mclennan.com. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.